Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here with a What a Deck profile for the Amorphage Slot Machine deck, aka Pure Amorphages. Haven't decided which one I'm going to use yet, one of those two, either way. I'm just going to name off all the cards in the deck, and then I'll explain how it works. So we've got 3 Vector Pendulum the Drake Overlord, and then 3 copies of every Amorphage monster. I'm not going to name them off because they don't have the American names for them yet, and it doesn't matter, just 3 of all the Amorphages. It's that simple. And for spells, we've got 3 Igknight Reload, 3 Amorphage Infection, 3 Amorphage Persona, and then for traps, 3 Pendulum Reborn, and 1 Amorphage Lysis, or the Amorphage Trap. Extra deck, it's a rank 4 toolbox. There's nothing specific. I rarely go into it. I would recommend 2 Castels, because that's what you make most of the time you need to make things. Magister Paladin's pretty good, because he can help you search out any of your Amorphages if you really need to. If you can't maintain your Pendulum scale, sometimes it's better to grab one of those. Everything else is just whatever you think is a good rank 4 is a good thing to go into it. So how this deck works, you need to get essentially a 4-card combo to begin. You need your scales, they're all 5s and 3s, and then you need 2 level 4 monsters that you can pendulum out. If you're unfamiliar with how these work, all the pendulum scales negate one aspect of the game. This one makes it so that all cards are banished instead of going to the graveyard. This one makes it so you can't add cards from your deck to your hand except by drawing them, unless they're Amorphage cards. All of those come with the caveat, like, except Amorphages. Neither player takes card effect damage. Neither player can tribute monsters except Amorphage monsters. Neither player can activate cards or effects on a chain. Neither player can activate traps except Amorphage traps. No spells except Amorphage spells. And no effect monsters, no monster effects except Amorphage effects. So you want to get your pendulum scales up, and then they also have the effect that during your standby phase, you have to tribute a monster or they're destroyed. So what you need is your scales and then 2 level 4 monsters that you can pendulum out again so that you can continually tribute those 2 monsters and recycle. Otherwise your pendulum scales are getting blown up. And if your pendulum scales get blown up, you're doomed, essentially, because it's very difficult to recover in this deck. That's why I call it the Slot Machine deck, because you have to have a really good opening hand. And that's why I play 2 or 3 of every Amorphage. You can't be picky or choosy, you just have to play all of them, because that's the only way you'll get your scales. And maybe you'll get the ones that aren't as useful, like the one on the chain and the one the effect damage. You don't want those in your pendulum zones. You want those are your level 4s you want to summon. They have high attack, and this one has really high defense. You don't want to pendulum summon with those, but sometimes you have to because that's all that you have, and it's better to maintain and start and at least lock down some aspect of the game than it is to not do anything. Vector Pendulum is in here because he negates pendulum monsters. All the cards in your opponent's pendulum zone. So it's additional lockdown. He's also another 3 in a thing that's nothing but 3s and 5s, and he's also a level 4 monster. Some people like to play the other Vector Pendulums, but I don't like playing one-ofs, and this guy doesn't particularly seem all that useful. And plus, if you get them, the thing about these guys is because they destroy themselves, if you do happen to, like, once you get going, say you have to start out with the 3 and a 5 that doesn't particularly lock down your opponent, and then you draw the one that locks down traps. Well, you want to replace this with the one that locks down traps because your opponent has all these traps. So what you're going to do is just let this get destroyed. Don't tribute for his effect and put this guy in his place. But if you start with Vector Pendulum, you're good starting out because you don't have to maintain anything. But then as the duel goes on, unless they're playing pendulums, you have a card that's not helping you in any way, and then they're going to be able to destroy your stuff. So it's all about maintaining that. To do that, that's why we play the Igknight Reload. That is going to let you shuffle as many Amorphage cards, or as many Pendulum cards as you have in your hand back into the deck, and draw that many +1. So that's just going to give you 1 extra card, essentially. Playing this is almost like playing a 39-card deck. It's kind of like having Upstart Goblin. If you open with 4 Amorphages and this, you can draw and get 5 Amorphages. So it's just slightly better in that way. The field spell, this one will give all Amorphages 100 attack and defense for each Amorphage card on the field. And if a monster in your hand or side of the field is tributed or destroyed by battle or card effect, you can search an Amorphage. This is very important. You want to get this as soon as you can, because that's going to just allow you to help get recursion, help continue to keep your pendulum scales up. Same thing, the field spell gives all Amorphages 300 attack and defense, and if a monster you control is tributed, you can draw a card. That's up to twice per turn. So if you get this, and then you've got your 2 level 4s, you're tributing each turn, you're drawing 2 cards. If you've got that, you're searching. So the ideal hand is a 3, a 5, 2 of these level 4 monsters, and then 1 of these 2. If you don't get that, if you happen to get a bunch of 5s, or you happen to not get a bunch of these high level ones that you can't pendulum summon, or a bunch of the low level ones, then you're going to be in for a spot of bother. We play Pendulum Reborn because that lets you get monsters from your extra deck or graveyard back. Useful in certain situations, as long as you don't have the trap one, which I usually don't like to use him in the Pendulum Zone, just because traps are falling out of favor, and plus he's a level 4. He's better because you can special summon him out again and again. I'd rather shut down spells and the graveyard or something. So if you don't have him in the Pendulum Zone, you can use Pendulum Reborn. And that'll let you, even if you just have 1 monster, you can tribute him twice by getting him back. Or if this guy gets destroyed in your Pendulum Zone, or this guy, your high level ones that you can't Pendulum summon, you can summon them back out with Pendulum Reborn. And I should mention while I'm here, all the Amorphages have the same monster effect, or almost the same monster effect. All the level 4 lower ones say if this card is Pendulum summoned or flip faced up, neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphages. So that's again why you want to get your scales up, because if you Pendulum summon a monster who has 1750 attack or 2000 defense and your opponent can't get into the extra deck, sometimes they don't have monsters to get over that. So you just want to maintain that as much as you can. The only difference is these higher ones don't have to be Pendulum or flip summon, just as long as they're on the field. So that can actually work with Pendulum Reborn. If you want to start out and play this, even if you don't have any monsters, set Pendulum Reborn, and then during the standby phase after this is destroyed, just summon it back out, and then you lock down the extra deck with a 2750 monster, which is pretty nice. So I think that pretty much covers. Oh yeah, the trap. I don't like the trap. I didn't like the trap as much, but it's growing on me. It became pretty useful in the What a deck. All monsters on the field except Amorphages lose 100 attack and defense, which combined with this is going to make their attacks ridiculous. You can get to 4,000 fairly easily if you can swarm the field. And if a card in your Pendulum Zone is destroyed, you could place an Amorphage Pendulum from your deck into the zone. The problem with this, because this seems really good, if they Twin Twister, you could just replace your Amorphage cards. But most of the time, if you start with this in your opening hand, it's not very useful. It's only useful once you have an established board. If you're just setting this, most likely what's going to happen is during your standby phase, this will get destroyed. One of these will get destroyed. You'll add another one from your deck into the Pendulum Zone, and then because it's still the standby phase, it'll immediately get destroyed. Which, if you have the extra cards in your hand, it's a good way to get level 4s into your extra deck, because you can just put one of these, let it get destroyed, and then pendulum it out. But a lot of times I found it wasn't useful. I only play one of it. It's searchable with this anyway. It's not essential to the deck. But if you do want it 2 more in the extra deck, you could easily replace Pendulum Reborn with that and have almost the same. Which is the only cards in the side deck I would recommend. Twin Twister and Lysis. You can play Goes and Match and Rivalry of Warlords because these are all Earth Dragon, but that's only useful against certain decks. And I'm not sure if you want to give rid of the utility of Pendulum Reborn, but if you want to be a real lockdown deck, that can really help. You just got to make sure you don't have this trap guy out here. Extra Buck, I considered for draw power, but it's only good draw power if you're already losing, essentially. And everything else is just other stuff that people told me that I couldn't get to work. Wabaku, it'll stop your monsters from being destroyed, but it's a little too slow. I guess I forgot about this. So when your monsters are flipped face up or pendulum summoned, which means these ones with the big defense, this one has 1850, this one has 2050, 1950, and these two will give defense. So if you can't make your scales, a good play to make is to put out the field spell and set one of these if you can, because if they attack into it without summoning from the extra deck, especially if you have other traps. They'll shut down their own extra deck access, and they won't be able to do anything. But that rarely happens, and once they know what you're playing, they're not going to do that. But if you wanted to go for a slower version of this deck, Waboku works pretty good. Again, though, I kept having it negated by this, and it only really like stalls things out. I hear a lot of people talk about Scapegoat, because it summons 4 tokens that you can use to tribute to maintain these. But it doesn't work if you have this guy out, because you can only tribute Amorphages. It doesn't work if you have this guy out, because you can only activate Amorphage spells. So you either have to not run them, or just hope you don't get them in Scapegoat. So it just adds more luck to the balance. Pot of Riches I also heard, but I don't want to shuffle things from my extra deck back into the deck most of the time. I have Pendulum Reborn for these big guys, and everything else I'd want to summon out. So I didn't really like that. The Ritual spell, I didn't think he was all that good. He only negates the face-up, Synchro, Fusion, and Ixie monsters. He skips your opponent's main phase 1, like the first one after this is summoned, which is kind of brutal, but I don't think it's worth the effect, because they could still do other stuff. They could still just like Dark Hole Raigeki. Like, he's a win harder card. You have to already have everything established and then get him out. And at that point, like, you would just beat down. There's no point in wasting deck space with him, I believe. Again, he's just one of I don't want to play. This was the only other one I thought might be good. This Koki Miru Dragon in a side deck. During each of your end phases, destroy this unless you can reveal a Dragon-type monster from your hand. Light and Dark monsters can't be special summoned. Against Cosmos, really, really good. You just put this out first turn, you keep the dragons in your hand. It's difficult for them to get over unless they have Honest, and they can't special summon any of their monsters. So that really helps out. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. Next week, I'm going to be taking a look at Melodious, which is a deck I did before, but now I'm going to do it again, but better. So I'll see you then. Until then, good luck. Have fun.